Okay, so yeah, we're an EPAO, which is an endpoint assessment organisation. So we are registered for that particular role. We are registered for the CAC, Community Activator Coach, the Community Sports and Health Officer, and personal training. As part of our job, really, is to assess apprentices. So when you enter Gateway, we will deal with all the Gateway, and we will provide an assessor to come out to you, and that obviously might change in the next couple of months. And we will assess your apprentices and do all of the different paperwork and IQA and everything that goes with that, and then hopefully provide you with a qualification, okay, to say that you were successful in your apprenticeship. So that is basically what we do. And we are obviously allowed to tell you and inform you and teach you and do whatever we have to on what's called the EPA, the endpoint assessment process. So I can basically tell you today, and on various different sessions that we'll arrange with George, various different ways of approaching your EPA, what will happen on the day, etc., what you have to do as an apprentice, and also for the employers as well. Okay, so that's basically what we do in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Great. So what we're going to do now, Chris, if you just kind of flick through your slides for us, we're just going to ask Chris what we've got for the guys that are attending. We've got a few questions that either as a kind of tutor workforce or have come directly from potentially some of your employers that we thought would be good to ask Chris. So we're going to go through these questions now, and what you're going to have following these is 5 questions. It's actually, we're going to open the floor to you guys to ask a couple of questions, you know, if you have them. So hopefully just think throughout this call, what does EPA mean to you? What your questions are? And hopefully Chris can shed some real clarity on that, or as much clarity as we possibly can, given the current circumstances. So Chris, first question really for the guys is we've obviously had some of our apprentices go through to endpoint assessment and come out the other side now, and they're trickling through on a daily basis. But what has been the positives within the area so far within our EPA? So what's been the positive out of the EPAs you've seen from the kind of Premier network so far?
Okay, so forgive me if, first of all, can I just say forgive me if there's any spelling mistakes in here, because I've had to obviously rush this through quite quickly. We've been a little bit hectic like you have with all the what's going on at the moment. So I only put this together and finished it at 11:15 this morning. So I do apologise if there are a few little errors in my spelling. So first of all, let's go through the positive areas so far. We've only had 4, so we're judging it on the 4, but there have been really good reflective accounts so far, and this is a big area of which I think is neglected. We've done lots of assessments with other apprentices from different organisations, and reflective accounts are a very weak area, and they should not be. Okay, so for you lot, your reflective accounts are good, and I would say obviously we can still improve them, but they are really solid and they give good evidence, and we can see that before the panel interview even starts. And that's what you want to do as an apprentice. You want to show your evidence, you want to show your KSBs, which are the knowledge, skills and behaviours. So I'm going to refer to them as KSBs all the way through this, and you want to show that in your reflective accounts. Okay, second one, very good KSBs shown throughout the 3 tasks, good standard of knowledge throughout. And this, you know, this is good because obviously I'm going to refer to other apprentices that we've seen for the last year that we've been assessing. So there have been weak areas, and there are always weak areas in different tasks, and ones that you can improve, and also other organisations or training providers can improve as well. But generally, there have been a good standard of knowledge, skills and behaviours throughout, and that is really pleasing to see. Good organisation of the EPAs. Now, this is important as well. Now, I'll tell you a story. Last week, I went to see an apprentice. It wasn't one of yours, and he was doing a tennis coaching session in a public park. And so when I got there, obviously he has to plan that session. There was no facilities whatsoever for the planning. There was no facilities for the reflective account that takes place afterwards. There was no facilities for task 2 and task 3. So that was an absolute disaster. It was in London. It was a waste of my time, really. I was able to do the coaching observation, but it was really difficult because the planning has to take place in a quiet area to give every opportunity for the apprentice to do as well as they can. So the organisation of the EPA is crucial, and people think, oh, well, I've just booked a room out, it's fine. Just double check that all your organisation is good, because what happens then, if you don't get that right, is that you will panic and you will start to feel the pressure on the day. So good organisation, making sure that your facilities are booked, there's a room booked, equipment, and that's with you and the employer, and maybe even the training provider as well, all of you, to make sure that that's all done so that you feel really, really relaxed on the day. Okay, so generally for you, you've had that done, and that is really good. Okay. Some in-depth knowledge, skills and behaviours shown in, and I've brought these 3 volunteering tasks to be done when organising events, customer insight and evaluation tools. So we've seen some really good knowledge, skills and behaviours in those areas. A very professional approach by your apprentices in your dress, your behaviour and your manner with the clients. We've seen that at really high standards, so that is really pleasing. Like the way that you validate and evaluate your procedures, so your validation and your validation and evaluation procedures linked to your KPIs. Okay, some of your apprentices have talked about this, how you do your KPIs, how you're measured. That's a really good thing. It's a really good way of making sure that you're hitting targets and stuff. So we do like to see that. That's good. Excellent adhering to the values of the company. So we can see that in your whole approach on the day, so that you're adhering to the values of the companies and the employers. Okay, so they're the positives so far, George.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think hopefully you guys kind of hearing that is quite good, and I'm sure actually just looking through the chat box and actually knowing some of the names in there, is it I'm really confident looking that you're going to be able to show those positive areas as well. And I think for us as an organisation within Premier, that's something that actually some of those things that you pulled out there, Chris, are something that we work really hard on and strive for on a daily basis. And then for me as well, being part of the quality team, is actually things like the professional approach, adhering to the values of the company, is something that we work, and the guys on the ground and all your franchisees and activity professionals are working really hard on. So it's really nice for us to have that feedback. I'm really confident that our guys are going to continue to show those values. So that's brilliant to hear those that feedback from that question, Chris. So thanks for that.
Okay.
So brilliant. To move on, or have you got? Yeah. So moving on to question number 2. Appreciate this. This might be a challenging question, Chris, and guys that are on the call. Actually, the situation that we're in at the minute is obviously incredibly challenging, as we've discussed already quite a lot over the last day and a half. But Chris, could you just give us whatever information you do have regarding EPA during the kind of coronavirus? And I appreciate that this is a really challenging one to answer at the moment.
Yeah, okay. So what we know is there was some instructions from the Institute for Apprenticeships on Wednesday, so it was on Monday. It came out Monday night, so everybody was busily reading it all. And basically from that, they are saying that we should try and complete assessments as much as possible as we can. However, it obviously poses a difficult problem for the CAC. So let's start off with the CAC too, because I'm aware that we've got CAC apprentices and CSHOs on here. So for the CAC, you need to do a practical observation. So that will be a very difficult thing to do at the present time. However, we are discussing at the moment, and what has to happen in this process is the Institute gives guidance, and then what's called the overall, say, governing body, if you like, which is SIMSPA for sport, that's an organisation, have to approve any changes that take place. Okay, so what we've got to do So there are 3 CSHO organisations, so 3 organisations that can assess the CSHO and about 9 that can assess the CAC, and we're on both of them. So what we have to do is we have to get together with other awarding bodies, other EPAOs, so endpoint assessment organisations, and we'll have to discuss how we can do this, how we can get through these assessments. However, when we do discuss this, we have to make sure that the CIMSPA make sure that nothing is compromised, that everything is robust and reliable, and everyone is doing the same thing. Now, this will take a little bit of time. The light at the end of the tunnel at the moment is that we're looking at the CAC, for example. The coaching observation might be that you plan. So you might plan remotely with us, and then it will be followed by a professional discussion on all the KSBs that are normally assessed on the coaching task. Okay, so we would ask you about safety and you would discuss this. So this is the possibility at the moment. With the CSHO, the 2 tasks that are not normally done remote, which is all 4, 2 of them are definitely done face-to-face at the moment. Task 1, which is the work-based op, this could be still done remotely with, for example, Microsoft Teams, with cameras, you know, with videos on. That is not really, I don't see a problem, because a professional discussion can take place. Although it's remote, it still can take place. We can still assess the apprentice. We can still see the apprentice leading discussions or showing research or analysis or whatever. I don't see that being a problem. Case study challenge is a little bit more, but it can be still done remote, and the Institute for Apprenticeships have already said that these can be done remote. So at the moment, to sum it up in a nutshell, we are trying to bang on the door of CIMSPA, and that is another story, but they're the organisation we have to adhere to, and say, look, let's get together on a conference call this week and say, look, how can we do this? How can all the organisations do it, keeping the consistency, reliability, and the assessment, you know, procedures as much as possible to how they should be. Okay, does that make it clearer? Hope I haven't been too complicated there.
No, I think just trying to keep an eye on the chat box to see if anybody's got any comments there. But obviously, again, at the end, we'll have a chance to ask Chris a couple of questions. But yeah, I think that's really helpful for us, because I know, again, I've had conversations with a couple of guys now over the last kind of 48 hours. And I think just to re-stress that point is that as soon as everybody knows more and there's more kind of clarity and answers into the way that things can work, as soon as Chris, you know, that we'll have that conversation, and obviously we'll communicate back to you guys, the learners, and also obviously to your business mentors and employers as well. So my comment on top of that is just you've got a really good opportunity here, and actually using this time as a positive in quite a difficult scenario is actually you've got a lot of time potentially to prepare, do some further research, actually think about some of the elements of your EPA and how you can really be on fine form for when that day eventually does come, whether that's remotely or face-to-face in a couple of months. So you've got a really big opportunity to do that. Your tutors will also be arranging progress reviews and one-to-ones with you over this period. So please, you know, lean on your tutors, use them, because they're going to help you and support you as much as they can in your preparation for that. But sit tight for updates, and we'll update you as soon as we possibly can with any new information on that. So brilliant, thank you.
That, George, I think we need to say is what you're saying is absolutely correct. You're still going to be assessed on the KSBs associated with each task. So however that's done doesn't really make a difference on what you are going to be discussing with your assessor. There'll be no changes, there'll be no different knowledge, skills and behaviours put in there. So all the guidance documents are still the same, and you should be using the time to go through each task, knowing what knowledge and skill and behaviour we're going to be looking at in that task, and seeing, right, okay, what's my knowledge of that? What do I understand about that? How can I show that? So there'll be no changes in those. So really, it's a great time to brush up on that and develop your knowledge for all of those tasks.
Excellent. And for those of you who are on this call that are actually nearing Gateway and your endpoint assessment, you should have received a toolkit for your respected course, which will have a load of guidance in. So if you haven't got that for whatever reason, you get on the phone to your tutor and they'll resend that to you, and that will really support you, which Chris is created for us in preparing. So that's really important. You've got a toolkit for each standard. So contact your tutor if you haven't got that. Obviously, those guys of you that have started in the last couple of months, this is just preparing you for kind of 12-month time when you're going into it. So brilliant. Moving on to question 3. So again, kind of looking at this, and I appreciate that actually we've only had kind of drips and drabs coming through from our guys, but maybe quite generically, if you don't mind, if you've got kind of some 5 tips for learners on ways they can prepare, and maybe even what kind of this links into what we just spoke about, how they can actually use this time to prepare as well.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to start first of all, and it is being prepared, okay? Just so important. I know this sounds like, it's an obvious, but make sure what I mentioned before is everything's booked on the day, your presentation's on a USB. How can you get it or a lot of you do Gmail or Google Drive, that's fine. Wi-Fi connections, tested before. I've had so many times where, Wi-Fi hasn't been good. And what we tend to do is use an independent employer, which Skypes in or Google Hangouts in or whatever way we do it. And so the Wi-Fi does need to be okay. If it's not okay, we can't do that. And therefore the assessment can't take place really, because the independent employer has to be there. It makes it much more robust and far better for the apprentice that you've got 2 people who will be, say, in the panel interview asking you your questions, and 2 people deciding on whether you know certain things. So make sure Wi-Fi is there. Laptops, obviously, presentations, equipment, connection leads, make sure those connection leads are working. There's been numerous times where these things haven't worked, and, it makes it quite difficult. Make a checklist, okay, on the day. Just do a checklist for the day. There are ones in your toolkit. There's loads of checklists. Add to them. Put everything in. Use them as a template and add to them. Make sure they're all ticked off for you on the day. And what that does is it doesn't benefit your assessment and the assessor, but it benefits you, because when you come along to that day and you're all prepared, you are going to feel far more at ease, and it's all about you and how you perform on that day. So anything which makes you at ease and just lowers the nerves, if you like, is going to be a very important thing to do. So being prepared is the top tip. Okay, mock assessments. Now, mock assessments are crucial. So get people, your TPs, your training providers, employers, to go through a panel interview with you, asking the questions that are on there. And the other top tip is be concise. These timings, you have a set time for your presentation and you have a set time for your panel interview. And so be concise, don't waffle. You need to be on point, especially if you want the distinction, because you need to show the distinction criteria. So practice your tasks with your mentor. Make sure you are concise. And get your mentors should be saying when you're not being concise, when you're waffling. All the time is when you should refer to what that knowledge is that you want to show. Okay. Presentation and interview are only 30 minutes for the CAC and 30 minutes for the CSHO plus 45 for the interview. It is tight, and concise is the big thing. So practice your mock assessments, practice being concise, and on the day that will really, really help you. Okay, now this is a little point here that I think is always a good one. When I was training as a PE teacher, I was told by, just have a little card or something in your pockets, just a little tip really for you. And because if you want the distinction, you want to do well on the day, you just need to remember a couple of things. And if you have a card that you fill out your plan and then just write a few things down on your card, that's fine. There is nothing to say you can't do that. And so, for example, let's look at that distinction there. Actively encouraging the group to identify potential hazards. There are so many great coaches out there, but they'll forget to do that at the start. That can be done in 10 seconds. You can tell or ask your clients, just turn around, what could be a potential hazard when you're working in this space? That is it, done, 5 seconds. And that shows me distinction. Ask the children to identify possible safety hazards is a distinction criteria. So on your card, just put safety hazards, a little prompt as you're doing your intro, and bang, your distinction's done. So that's a top tip for you. If you don't want to use them, that's fine, but they are a really good idea for coaching, because there's so many other variables when you coach. So many, there's a lot of you are with children, and we all know how demanding that is. So use a little card to prompt you. Absolutely brilliant idea. For the CAC, just make sure on the day that you plan and deliver a whole coaching session. So don't be relying on stations or kids going off for 20 minutes with another coach. 45 minutes is tops, 30 minutes is the minimum. All we need to see is that you can put a complete coaching session together. Okay, so try and keep to that warm up, main content, cool down. Okay. Terminology, look at the apprenticeship guidance documents, identify keywords so that you know. So discuss, debate, defend, what does that mean? Behavior change, what does that mean? So make sure your terminology on the day, you know what that is. There's so many times I've asked, for example, I'll use a classic one, when have you shown integrity when you've worked as a CAC? And so many apprentices who have said to me, I don't know what that word is. Okay, I don't know what that means. So fine, I can break that down, but you're wasting time, and you are going to inhibit or be able to, you're not going to be able to show your full evidence if you keep not knowing what the keywords are, and it does show that you're not understanding what is being asked of you. So make sure your terminology is up to scratch for the day. Okay, we're on to question 4. George, do you want to sum that one up?
Yeah, so yeah, that's really helpful. I think, again, Chris, if you don't mind just popping back to the last slide, that'd be great. I think in regards to some of these keywords, so please note that depending on kind of where you are in your journey, either you're using Google Classroom or OneFile, is on both platforms, there is keyword glossaries for you to be aware of for your EPA. I believe, Chris, is that also in the toolkit? If not, we can add that in.
Yes.
For you to refer to, so make sure you read those. So again, Chris mentioned a really clear one there, I think, in around integrity, but also for us, I think behavior change is one that we just get a bit confused on at times, because we start thinking very much in our coaching head around thinking about changing behavior in terms of managing poor behavior within a classroom environment, for example. Actually, what we're referring to for behavior change is what will be really clear in some of the upcoming sessions as well, is this is about changing the way that we as a society are acting. So we're quite a sedentary society at the moment. How can we get people active? How can we get them participating in sport and physical activity? So that's another key one I think we need to be really clear on.
That is a very, very common mistake. And a lot of apprentices will say, oh yeah, I deal with behaviour like this. Exactly, spot on there, George, with behaviour change.
Yeah, so we're gonna support you, and actually, particularly for guys that are currently just about to enter Unit 2 of our program, this is around both behaviour change and barriers to participation. So they will very much look at behaviour change. Also, the session we have today at 1:15, which I'm leading, is around barriers to participation, which will allude very much to behaviour change and what you can do to change that. So actually, those of you that are thinking or not very confident on behaviour change, there will be a session today and more coming forward on how that can support you. So brilliant, Chris, that was really helpful. Thanks for that. Hopefully guys are listening, and that's kind of made your brain start to tick over a little bit and think about what you're going to be doing when your time comes to be assessed. So question number 4 is again, we like things in 5s, but evidently, but what are the 5 biggest things a learner can do to achieve a distinction, or what do they need to be doing to really be targeting those higher grades, which I know so many people on this call have the aspiration to do so? Okay.
All right. So a very obvious one is use the KSBs. Now, I don't know really why certain apprentices that we have looked at, not in your organisation, who are not aware of the KSBs that are being assessed on each task, which is bizarre really, but it has happened. So with each task, you are going to be assessed on each KSB. So you're looking at the KSBs and you look at the pass and you look at the distinction. So if you see on the right hand side there, we're just going honesty, sincerity, staying with the integrity, provides a range of relevant examples of integrity in action. Okay, so can they do that? Can they say where they've used integrity? So this might be, and I don't want to go into what integrity is, but you might be thinking about maybe doing something which is a little bit hard to do, but you think it's the right thing to do as a CAC. So you might have to tackle something that's not so great. So just give us some examples of that. Now, if you look at the distinction, you're going to say, you're going to tell me, demonstrate and can justify integrity. So, you know, give me those examples, describe those examples and say why it is important to act with integrity. It is just slight differences. So justify why integrity is important for you as a professional. And so when you're looking, this is just in a nutshell, look at the KSB. So look at the knowledge or behavior as we've got here. Look at the difference between the distinction and the pass. Okay, so that is the key thing, is looking at what the differences are and maybe even underline them, make them in bold, etc. And it will link in a second to what you should do. So I'll tell you a little bit about how you should take that further in a second. Okay, mock assessments. Now, we've mentioned this before, but I can't believe that some apprentices do not have any mocks, and they tell you this. They say, oh, we haven't had any mocks. Have your mock for each task and get your mentor or whoever it is, employer, anyone, to go through set questions. They're all in your apprentice toolkit, and practice being concise. Practice to what are you going to say here? Because, as I said, you've only got the 30 minutes for the interview, for the CAC, and 45 for the CSHO. So not a lot of time. Mock assessments are crucial, make you feel much better on the day.
Can I just jump in there? So yeah. Something that we are looking to do is actually get some mock assessments kind of built into this kind of platform over the next couple of weeks in some way, shape or form. So we'll keep you posted with that, but it's definitely something that we're looking, and your tutors should be looking to support you with when you're ready. So those of you that are looking to get yourself into Gateway, we will be supporting you with some mock EPA type activities, and also Chris is kindly volunteered to potentially go into each area of the EPA a little bit further to support you with that as well. So okay. Just know that's a plan for that.
Yeah. Okay, now looking at the KSBs, which are obviously the Bible for you, you have got at the back of your toolkit, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the purple and the yellow. The yellow means knowledge, so we put knowledge there as yellow, and different colours for the behaviours and skills. So if we have a little look at that particular one, this is the CSHO, so it might sound as though it's a little bit, you know, quite... some of the words there are terminology, experiential play, animation, etc. But if you look underneath, it says ability to discuss how adaptive has been used to engage new audiences and animate no traditional spaces at local levels. So what that just means is that, you know, how have you brought about physical activity to engage and make somebody want to get involved in non-traditional spaces? So in the bottom, at the back of your toolkit, you've got all of these KSBs, and you've got a box underneath where you can start. And I've started to put an example there of how I would do this. So you could do this while you're obviously got a little bit more time at home, is go into those boxes and note down what you know about this. How are you going to answer this? Okay, so I've just started there. The program we delivered in East London called Get Fit, Get Fed, blah, blah, blah. And I've started to describe how I adapted physical activity, how I engaged new audiences. And I'm just practicing. I'm showing my knowledge. I'm writing down what I know. And you've got at the back of your toolkit every single KSB associated with each task, and you can work your way through them and start to note down what you know about each one. Also, the great thing about doing that is what you don't know, because obviously some of you are at different stages of your apprenticeship, so there are going to be lots that you don't know. So therefore then you'll know what you do and what you need to develop. Okay, that is a key thing, and use those little task sheets at the back. They are really, really handy for you to look at what you know and what you don't know.
Oh, I think we might have lost you, Chris, there. I'm not quite sure what's happened. If you're back.
Are we there or not?
Yeah, you're back. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know if that was just me, if that was everyone, but I can hear you now.
That's okay. Are you back at sharing of screen, or have I turned that off?
You've just turned it off, so your screen's just gone. If you can share again, if not, I can pull my screen up.
Hang on a sec. Let me see. Share. Okay. Just bear with me for a second.
Yeah, not to worry.
Back on.
Not at the moment. It does sometimes have a couple second lag, but no, I can't see it personally. No, not my end.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes if it's not shared desktop, it can be a bit temperamental.
Okay. Anything there? No.
No. Do you want, if I share my screen for the last couple of questions and you can refer to your? Yeah, is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. Okay.
Apologies. So, you know what technology can be like.
Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah. So my screen's up now, which hopefully you can see. So are you happy for us to move to question 5?
Yeah, just got one thing left with the top tip for distinctions.
Yeah, please.
Which is include, did you hear this bit, include weaker areas in your presentation or reflective accounts? Did anyone hear that before, or did you hear that before, George?
I think it might be great if you just recover it for anyone that might have missed that as well.
So there are quite a few, tough areas that you need to know about. So things like for the CSHO, funding landscapes, okay? If you don't, this is not the best of areas for you, then include as much evidence of this topic in your reflective accounts. It's a simple, very easy tip, because if I see that in your reflective account, you've talked about your fund and landscape, what's out there, what can you apply for, how can you do it, and you've shown that in a reflective account, then when I come around to the panel interview, you're not going to get asked as much about it. And if it's a weaker area, then that's going to be better for you. In your presentation, exactly the same. So if you're, struggling a little bit with some areas that you're not great on, then include it in your presentation. If you're not great with evaluation tools, you're not sure about how can you evaluate an event, put it in your presentation. Show us how you've used different tools, put a picture of it in there of a feedback form, a questionnaire, etc. So weaker areas, try and show it in your presentation or your reflective accounts. Okay, George, you want to move on?
Brilliant. Yeah, just echo that last point. Definitely some of the best bits of work that I've seen from my learners directly is those that have actually said that, this is an area I'm not very comfortable in. This is what I'm going to do to get better in this area, or this is an area that actually at the time I felt I had an area for development in, but now I'm confident because I've done X, Y, and Z, and that really shows the hard work that you've all put in over that period. Okay. So the last question, just before we give the guys a couple of minutes to speak to yourself, Chris. For those on the call that this might relate to, is what can an employer do to ensure that the process is as smooth as possible for them, the learner, and the organisation? For yourselves as the
there are obvious ones. Great help with mock assessments if they can. Obviously, they need to have, and I think they need to start off with the document that we've provided, employer guidance, so that they know what tasks are going to be asked of their apprentice, and therefore are somewhat knowledgeable on the KSBs. associated with each task. So that would be a really good starting point, is the employer guidance document. And then obviously help with mock assessments, which is great anytime you can to ask a question and make sure that it's concise, that comes back and check the knowledge. Help with good choices for reflective accounts. Support the apprentice to book the facility, check Wi-Fi, make sure obviously everything's okay, because a lot of this will take place in the employer areas. And obviously just develop knowledge, skills and behaviours. So if you're knowledgeable about what they are, so for example, funding landscape, you know, what do you know? Where can you direct your apprentice to? How can they find that out? You know, have you got anything you can give to them to develop their knowledge, skills and behaviours? And they're all in the documents as well, so employers can get their hands on that. And last thing for the CSHO, employers probably will be involved in the task 1, which is the work-based observation. So any help with that, any help with mock assessments in that area would be fantastic, really.